Lord Jamar will live long, and I give strong blows to the average foe. He said it. Don't think that he won't come back giving those strong blows to Eminem. I don't even have to say anything. Don't think Lord Jamar is going to sleep on that. Seriously. I mean, oh boy. Yeah, Eminem, that was wrong. I kid you not, Mr. Marshall Mathers. That was not right. You basically disrespected somebody that is an icon to us, you know. And I'll be honest, I dug Eminem when he first came out. I heard Eminem before he went mainstream. My brother, you know, saw him live. This is way before anybody even knew who he was. I don't even know if he was in LA to meet with Dre at the time. I'm not sure. But he was dope. I mean, his stuff was raw. And I look at him, in the same light that I did a Saphir or, you know, uh, a Saphir or a Casual or Del the Funky Homo Sapien at that time. Because he was just, he was just a rapper to me, like it's so funny people act like he was the second coming, because of just the way that he was rapping. But his style, especially when he came out, yeah, it was his own, but it was like, I looked at him the same way I would look at somebody that was kind of his contemporary, a good rapper that had skills, nothing over the other. And I loved, listening to, you know, his wordplay and had, and just the same way I dug listening to, Dell, or Casual or Saphir, and even a word master like Razkaz. M to me was kind of the last of that school, And I'll say this: a lot of people thought he bit off a Chino XL. I'm a Chino XL fan, like I've been digging Chino for a long time. I don't think he did, even though, like, I mean, and even M said he's sort of like a cross between what was it, Ozzy Osbourne and Esham. Esham definitely was a shock rapper for that time, and I'll say probably one of the most like very shock. He coined the term acid rap, but he's pretty much linked in with like a lot of horrorcore hip hop stuff. Like insane poetry, and stuff like that. And all these Juggaloos are fans and stuff of him. But Esham has been doing stuff for a long time, in that supposed horrorcore shock rap genre, before even the whole Juggaloo like subculture, embraced him, or before it was even invented, to be honest. And M, they're both from Detroit, from what I understand. Is he from Detroit or Cincinnati? I forget. I think he is from Detroit. But yeah, I mean, to be honest, even getting back to that, yeah, I mean, yeah, Esham was pretty much kind of like a satanic rapper. No lie. Of course, sampling Sabbath and all that stuff. Not to say that Sabbath is a total satanic band, but that's a whole nother story. Let me get back on the subject. I need to digress. M, yeah, at first I thought his stuff was on point. I dug his style and all that, but it wasn't like he was above anyone. He was just another rapper that had his own thing going, and I thought it was cool, especially for that time when he came out. And just, I thought of him in the same light as a lot of the other rappers that I mentioned. And I was surprised, to be honest, when I found out that Dre signed him, because to me it was like Dre signing, Adele, the Funky Homo Sapien, or a Saphir, or anyone that kind of had that rap style, like, I mean, he was the last person that I would have expected Dre to even sign, not because he's white, but more because of his style of rapping, and that's cool. I mean, at the time it was cool, but the thing is, people started making him like the second coming, like he was like this, you know, like they tried to basically make him seem like he invented a lot of the stuff, like cutting and all that stuff, or just like that kind of flow, punch rhyming style. when a lot of rappers have been doing that stuff, man. Like, I mean, and just in different ways. He was just one of a bunch of rappers that rapped the way that he did. And I mean, they all had their own style. I kept mentioning some of them. But anyway, getting back to that. So now, in this day and age, I think he's feeling himself a little bit, man. You know, I didn't hear the diss that he did to Lauryn Hill, but definitely that wasn't cool. I mean, even to know about that, you know. Shout out to Lashid for pointing a lot of this stuff out. I should have said that at the beginning. And she's the reason that I'm kind of even inspired to even do this about Lord Jamar. Lord Jamar is definitely, he speaks his mind about things. And to be honest, he has a lot of insight even on how this industry works, let alone the history of hip hop, So I definitely listen to him when it comes to stuff like that, Eminem talking all this stuff about him because he's offended about, what Lord Jamar said about whites being guests in the house of hip hop. You got to understand, dude, like Lord Jamar's been in the hip hop for a long time, for a very, very long time. And plus, you got to keep in mind this too. A lot of people don't realize, and even the term, it's funny, Eminem used the term rap god, but how are you using a term, that people like Lord Jamar and Rakim made famous when it came to the term God being used, in a sense of not only rap, but just like, that's 5%er languages, like they refer to themselves as gods. So like you're using something that pretty much Lord Jamar and a lot of brothers and sisters that, are in the 5% nations of gods and earths have made famous in term. As a matter of fact, Lord Jamar being a 5%er definitely has a special take on hip hop because there's a lot of things within 5%er ideology that has a lot to do with hip hop. I mean, the cypher, the b-boy stance, all that stuff. Like, there's a lot of stuff from the 5%ers that have influenced hip hop. I mean, it's not like 5%ers just came in. They were there from the beginning. A lot of those brothers were fivers, from the beginning. Even as far as back as the 70s. I mean, you look at even weird rappers like Rem LZ. He was a 5%er. The brother that I was telling you guys about in the Basquiat video. You had if you guys have ever seen the movie Style Wars, Case 2, the one-armed guy that was getting up, that was rapping. He was a fiver. All the stuff that he was saying was like on some fiver stuff. Of course, Rakim, Poor Righteous Teachers. There's a whole history of Wu-Tang Clan's probably the most famous 5% rappers. 5%er rappers. So the 5%er, there's a lot of things in hip hop, terminology, all kinds of stuff, like that pretty much like you could be linked to the 5%ers, Rest in peace, Clarence 13, like I'm not a 5%er. I have friends that are, but you got to look at history for what it is. So Lord Jamar has a valid point in a lot of ways because not only is he's a New Yorker, not only, has he been in the hip hop probably since, near its beginnings. I mean, I'm sure he's like a few years older than me, so maybe he's seen hip hop in its earlier stages. Being a West Coast guy, being around 5 or 6 when I first heard the first hip hop song that I heard is one thing, but him being a New Yorker, and he's much older than me. I think he's born in the 60s, so he saw a lot of things, in New York at that time, and as well as like, of course, being black, because that's where a lot of that stuff, we pretty much birthed that, And the communities of hip hop, definitely it was an Afro American and Latin presence within hip hop itself, back then. Um, and you can't get away from the fact that like there's so many cats, like him being from New York, it is one thing, but also him being a 5%er, because that was very much an influence in early hip hop back then, you know. And even when you talk about Lord Jamar on an individual, and just his legacy in hip hop, yeah, man, he can say whatever he wants. Brand Nubian, they were some of the first of the many conscious rappers that really put forth, a black empowerment, pro-black ideology. They weren't necessarily Public Enemy, but they were like basically a representation of just brothers in different ways, like whether it be that brother, you know, from the suburbs or in the street, like they kind of represented that in the most casual way though. I could say my first, I saw the Sunshine video, but my favorite album by them is In God We Trust. That's when they, I think, went even more hardcore when it came to like just, it was a totally different kind of album when it came to Brand Nubian. They were part of Native Tongues, and I think they were one of the few groups that actually went hardcore in Native Tongues. You had De La Soul, Queen Latifah, Moni Love, Tribe Called Quest, I know Jungle Brothers, and then Brand Nubian. I think I'm missing somebody else. A few other people. Was Def Jeff? I don't know if Def Jeff wasn't a part of Native Tongue, but Brand Nubian was out of that clique because they were known as sort of like the hippie sort of hip hop or conscious hip hop too, but kind of in a in like sort of a middle working class type sense. But Brand Nubian, that first album kind of seemed more like that, but when Grand Poobah left, it's almost like, they turned it up, man. Like they went straight street. That second album was raw, dude. And it was jazzy and just between Sadat and Lord Jamar just killing it, dude, without even Grand Poobah. I mean, that man, that group has a legacy. But okay, getting back to him and Eminem had no right to even go there with him like that, because no matter how you feel about what Lord Jamar says, first of all, Lord Jamar did not insult him at all. He gave him props, but he also, spoke his piece about what he thinks in regards to the dominant society in hip hop, because of just things that he's not only seen within hip hop, but also in other genres of music when it came to that, and when he even said that, I saw that DJ Vlad interview before. He said that because basically, when you think about the roots of hip hop, a lot of it was to oppose the gang culture that was in predominantly, Afro Americans or Black Americans in a lot of Latin sections in New York, but also to oppose racism and all that. And I'm not going to deny that there was, no white presence, but earlier on, you got to understand in New York, I don't think that was a possibility. You can say later on when it came to maybe the graffiti aspect of it, I don't really know who the first white rappers was. A lot of people probably might think it's the Beastie Boys. I don't know. And even those guys were coming from a punk rock background, they kind of put their own thing into it. And that's a whole nother story. But even, you got, I know, old school, like white cats that are in the hip hop from LA. I mean, we had more of a diverse thing when it came to it, although it was still predominantly black and Black American and Latin out here on the West Coast. We also had Pacific Islanders and a few Southeast Asian cats, but mostly Pacific Islanders, at least where I'm from in the Long Beach area. You know, it's Long Beach, Carson, Harbor City, and we had white cats too. I know, like, one of my favorite poppers that I had the honor of even like being in circles with was a white dude by the name of Wave-O-Matic, Greek guy, and he unfortunately passed. You know, so we had that, and I mean, I could name a few other white cats in hip hop that have been pretty much in the whole scene out here for a long time. You know, even like one guy that's a Zulu, you know, that I know, he's a Zulu Nation. You know, Zulu Nation is pretty diverse. They have Zulus worldwide. But that got started in New York, you know. But getting back to Lord Jamar, sorry you guys, I keep going off. Lord Jamar has done more than what M is saying that he's done. That dude's an innovator, man. And he deserves the respect that anybody that's been an innovator in hip hop needs. Eminem, you can talk all day long about who you supposedly discovered, but that's not I mean, that's nothing when it comes to just even the formation of certain things within hip hop. That's just the tip of the iceberg. You can't just talk about and brag and feel yourself when Lord Jamar himself laid the foundations for even people like you, whether intended or not. You know, Lord Jamar himself, I mean, look at his track record, man. And I'm glad, to be honest, even though, however, you know, I have my feelings about DJ Vlad too, when it comes to, I think sometimes he could be an instigator and all that. But I really like the fact that he does interview Lord Jamar. And I'm glad finally Lord Jamar has his own show. But Lord Jamar is definitely an innovator. You know, not just in rapping, but also just giving hip hop an intellectual voice when it came to not only issues, when it comes to black folks, but also just as a genre and as just like not just some music to be listened to and to be pimped, but as something revolutionary and as a culture. So Eminem, you have no freaking ground to stand on when you come off against Lord Jamar. You can't be rude to him like that. You are a guest when it comes to what he's talking about. Putting your feet up in somebody's house, calling yourself Elvis, when Elvis, we all know, especially me, because I'm a rock and roller myself, Elvis was used pretty much the same way to cross over hip hop. To cross over rock and roll. You know, are you saying that you're the king of hip hop now? To be honest, I don't know if Elvis said that he's the king. He's not. Basically, Elvis, you know, pretty much the only reason that I'm not going in on as much on Elvis as I used to is because of just what other black rock and rollers have said, in a sense of just giving him a little bit more props than I even thought at the time. But I know the industry, their intentions for Elvis is what I totally am against. And it's almost like they typecasted black people when it came to rock and roll away from rock and roll. So you saying that you're like Elvis, what do you plan on doing? Are you saying that, like, are you saying basically you're going to be what Elvis represents to many of us in black society right now? Are you going to be that one where people are going to be taking over? I mean, like, you're going to be taking over hip hop. Your image is going to be taking over hip hop and black people will be typecast out of it. What do you mean by that? You can say things to be offensive, but at the same time, you really need to be keeping in mind what you are saying. Because those things, I'm sure you don't care, but those things are very sensitive. That's definitely something that the industry has, you know, used black entertainment to make money off of. Of course, it's a business. And we really need to start taking that in our hands. And, the thing is, it's like we can't let that happen. You can't just put your feet up in someone's house and then refer to them as a fucking bitch, saying to fetch you a fucking remote. Are you referring to him as a fucking slave? What's up with that, dude? You need to show respect where respect is due. Eminem, you need to show respect where respect is due. Don't fill yourself too much because you might be filling yourself out. Trust me, the wave could turn real quick into a tsunami. You don't want that. Now, you should at least give him props for giving you props. And try to understand and talk to him about what he's saying as far as you being a guest in hip hop. And maybe because he probably didn't big up you too much, because he thought the same thing I did. Hey, you're an MC. Okay. He didn't treat you so special, so you got in your feelings. You know? It's all about skills, improving that. Yeah, I'm sure you have skills, but don't think that you're so bad that, nobody can take your ass out when it comes to rapping. And he has a free speech to say what he wants. Lord Jamar is definitely more of a veteran than you are, Eminem. He has more decades on you from what I understand. And has a great sense of the hip hop culture, let alone rapping and the etymology of all that too. So dissing him is not doing you any good. Anyway, I'd like to know what you guys think. Shout out to Lord Jamar. I really appreciate like a lot of his rapping skills and all that. Yeah, anyways, peace, y'all.